one of the dome structures. And these pieces that you have on the inside are pieces of the roof that just fell to the floor of the dome. You can look, you can see it, you can see there's a circumference. Here's part of the wall that's fallen down this way, okay, and here is part of the dome that is still intact. If we go to the next slide, you might see a little better. But we'll have to focus it. Right here. Well, maybe not. Okay, this was also destroyed in that war 9,600 years ago. Next slide, please. And if you can see this, this is very light. This is a piece of a bridge that crossed this crater where half of it's gone and half of it is just still standing there. I don't know exactly how many miles across this is. But again, how did our astronauts miss this? Next slide, please. Okay, these are more ruins. I myself have even had trouble seeing some of the things in this, but they've been very strong about this particular area, so I felt it was important to include it and just share it with you because maybe somebody in here will see something more than what I see. You know, people often do. So I'm just trying to share it. These structures here, it's a weird place. Again, this is along the equator on the far side of the moon.
A lot of those craters have a rising piece in the middle.
Yes, sir, they do. Yes, sir, they do. And, you know, some of them are full-fledged mountains, and they're just not supposed to be there. Next slide, please. Okay, now, look at this. Okay. Honey, is that the best we can post it? Okay, thanks. This area here apparently is a domed complex inside this crater, and I'm told that the world government picked this area because there's water underneath it. These are domes. These are a series of domes that are lit up from the inside.
Is that square thing the pyramid?
Which thing? This? This here? I don't know exactly what that is. It's not discernible in the pictures. You know, I think sometimes they purposely blur these just a little bit. Next slide, please. Here's another area in another crater. This is all lit up from the inside. Next slide. This structure here. This piece, this thing here, this length of object, whatever it is 13 miles. And it's just sticking up outside, out of the crater. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, I want you to look at this area right here. Everybody see this area? Is that a yes? Okay. How many of you have been to the Sears Tower in Chicago? You ever been to the top? It's about a mile high, right? Yes, that's what they say. It's about a mile high. Next slide. Here it is again. Now, I want you to know these photographs were taken from... This particular photograph was taken by the Lunar Orbiter at 86,000 feet. Okay? According to Morine, this is 7 miles high. And it's a monument to one of the old ETs. Next slide. Here's a close-up of it.
What the hell is it?
Your suspicions are pretty accurate. Back up just one more time. Okay. Now let's look. Now just look at the rest of the terrain here. Okay. Look at the rest of the terrain and just look at how this sticks out. 7 miles. How come our astronauts missed it? I mean, I hate to be redundant, but I'm just hoping somebody will have the answer. Next slide. Oh, we did that. Okay. One more time. this particular area, I'm told, is now being reactivated. They say, Moroni and Visayas have said that all of this are ruins and that there are underground facilities all through this area. And I just wanted to share it with you because they're very strong about this particular area. And this is a dome that is apparently that was still left intact. Next slide. Square craters. Now I've asked Mornay specifically, and he said there's no such thing as a square meteor. So, it's just one of them weird things. Next slide, please. Okay, craft sitting here, hanging over a crater. Next slide. These are all taken by the lunar orbiter. Weird crossed objects sitting in the middle of craters, dead center. Next slide. This was the photographer. Let's go one more slide. Okay, back up. Thank you. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, somebody else, I think George Leonard wrote this, somebody else is on the moon.
George Leonard, yeah.
George Leonard. Somebody else is absolutely living on the moon. I am told that there are 35,000 full-time human beings from Earth living on the moon. And they are Aryans by birth. Now, let me just say that one more time. They are Aryans. Now, let me just say that one more time. They are Aryans by birth. They are Aryans by birth. You're going to have to research them because if I come right out and say it, I'll get in deep trouble. Okay, Aryans by birth.
They're not.
They're also there with extraterrestrials. Between the moon and our Earth, there are 18,000 grays here. There are only apparently 2,000 real grays left. All the rest are clones. They're robots. They're organic robots. And microprocessors are grown in their head. And they are controlled by some kind of a radio frequency. Now, the Greys and the Orions also have this technology to absolutely replicate and duplicate a human being. And for those of you who are familiar with the old Dr. Beater stuff, before he was killed in a parking lot in Dallas, I would suggest you go back and re-research that information. Except he was told the Russians were doing it, and they're not doing it. It's extraterrestrials who are doing it, who are trying to undermine the free will of those of us on the surface of the planet. Because this is our home. Okay, Mars. I'm still working on more information, but I'm going to show you a couple things and share things that I've been told about Mars. The first thing I want to share with you about Mars is that, again, everything we've been told about it is wrong. Mars' atmosphere is full of oxygen and ozone. In fact, the local San Diego paper on March 23rd of 1995 flat out said that in 1971 they had discovered it was full of ozone. Well, folks, you go to the library and you pull out any book that you can find on Mars written by any scientist on this planet, and they don't say virtually anything about ozone. But it's there. We're told that that its actual gravity is about 1%. Well, if the atmosphere is so feeble, then how is it that it can have 300-mile-an-hour wind storms? If the atmosphere is so feeble, how is it that it can hold water at both poles? Next slide. Let's go next slide. I'm sorry. At both poles. And there's water at both poles. This is water, H2O. We're told that the Martian atmosphere never gets above 129 degrees below zero. And yet, this past February or March, you had a picture from the Hubble telescope of Mars and the North Polar Cap melting. Now, I'm not a scientist, But tell me, how does water melt at 129 degrees below zero? I'm open. I'm open. Okay, apparently Mars has been inhabited off and on as a base, as a small colony, as a staging point for extraterrestrials who are exploring and leaving our galaxy to go to another for 3.8 billion years. The ruins that Richard shows and other people, they're tombs. This is what I'm told, that they're tombs. And that there's far more there than is being shown. Most of it's been buried. Because during a war previous 69 million years ago,